Hi, my name is Preetpal, and today I have a childhood friend of mine. We grew up together. He is out of the RTP area, and he runs a software company by the name Byteridge. Welcome, Vinayak, to this podcast. Why don't you take a few seconds and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Preetpal, for inviting. Quite excited about what you're doing and deeply feel connected. So, I basically, like you said, run a company called Byteridge Inc. And I think outside work, I'm mostly focusing on family, marathons, ultramarathons, if I could say that, and books. And this continuous quest for a good coffee wherever I go. I think that's probably sums up who I am.
Yes, and you share two of those things. Of course, I don't ultra marathon like you, but I have a passion for running as well. But I don't have the time to run. So we will try to investigate how do you invent time besides being a CEO of a large organization. How do you invent time? So Vinayak, tell me something. Our friendship is about 22, 23, 1998 onwards, so about 28 years old, and we were together in the engineering school in the same class, right? So two questions, right? How did you come to Byteridge? How did you invent that particular company? And more importantly, how did this whole mission for ultra marathoning start?
Yeah. Interesting that you asked these two questions together. I think the answer is same. Uh, we are product of people that we spend most time with. And I would say uh, after engineering, I worked with Oracle and Microsoft, but I actually also got surrounded with a lot of people who were pursuing entrepreneurship. And there was a lot of talk back in 2008 about entrepreneurship. So that got me excited. Same thing happened with running. I used to play a lot. So I think one of the things that I've done consistently is I've played games, basketball, soccer, cricket, you name it. But when my kids were born, I think it became really hard to be able to take time out. And that's where I switched to running. I think for 4 years, I wasn't running a whole lot, maybe like 4 or 5 kilometers. And then COVID happened, and I ended up in a group of people who were ultra marathoners. So I am a product of the company that I kept in both the cases. And yeah, I think that could be a starting point.
Wise words of a wise man. You are known by the company you keep. Okay. So that's an interesting thing. A lot of people come on and they talk about motivations and where they got all of this. I think you're basically saying, hey, just let the life unfold and meet interesting people and interesting things will happen to you, whether it's a company or it's ultra marathoning. So that's an interesting perspective, Vinayak. So Vinayak, a multi-million dollar question. I presume you run a business larger than that. Is how do you keep these two balls up in the air, right? A company being a CEO of a company which you incepted, and then ultra marathoning, right? So give the audience some glimpse behind the curtain.
Sure. I'll add family to it. Uh, I think I'll address all three of them. I think one of the challenges I've seen, or a mistake that people make when they're building a company, is they do not delegate, and they do not create, get great people on team. I think so. The way I look at is my job is to delegate as much as I can, and let great people take over the ownership of various things. And I've been very fortunate. It took me quite some time, so it won't happen on the day one. I've been around for like 15 plus years. Similarly, I think with running, it's the same thing where I'm surrounded by people who are great at advice, great at giving me company, and then family where I have a great support from my partner. But if you see, the common thread between the three is consistency and persistence. So if you give long enough time for your company, for your running goals, or for your family life, you will realize that it's not as stressful. I think the challenge that I see is people want to do things overnight, like they want to do it in like 6 months, 3 months. They want to raise like tons of money overnight or exit like in a 1 year time. That's where the stress comes from. So my and consistency actually has a compounding effect. So while you may not see a whole lot of, you might be doing, like for example, in running, I only spend an hour a day, nothing more, and maybe 2 hours on the weekend on both the days. So my commitment to my running is really limited. Similarly, if I look at family, I think my commitment is really maybe 2 hours a day, and some on a weekend probably 3 hours a day, right? So what I could say is you can strike the right balance across these three things by probably expanding the timelines and when you want to achieve your goals, and stay consistent and persistent. I think that's what I would say at a very macro level.
So, Vinayak, that's very interesting, and I've known you for a long time, right? And I am a fan of yours for what you have built as a company. You used two words over there: consistency and persistence, right? I come from a slightly different camp, not necessarily from a different place where you're coming from. I use the word enjoy, and I use the word patience, right? And I think we're saying the same thing. You're saying consistency and persistence, except that consistency and persistence are superpowers of human beings, very, very hard to invoke. But if you enjoy the journey, the people, etc. So why don't you let the audience know how are you successful at creating that fantastic organization of yours while also inventing time for your two daughters, the wife, and also the running.
Yeah. I think I absolutely agree with what you said, and I think you have to enjoy the journey. So when you're consistent and persistent, you technically are also committed to that particular endeavor. With the organization, I think I have a true belief that there is a vision that leaders set, and there are people who buy the vision, and there are people who do not buy the vision. People who buy the vision join the train, and people who don't get off the train. When you're in the company, I think it's the values which keep you together. And whether sometimes we are able to phrase them clearly, sometimes we are not able to phrase them clearly. But what I've seen is that you have to patiently wait through and keep getting people onboarded, see whether it aligns. And over a period of time, if you are consistent in demonstrating the values that you hold, you claim to hold true, and also be showing consistent commitment to your vision, people give you that support. People enjoy that company. So that's my view. I think we've not largely changed. Patience also doesn't mean that you're not learning. I think one of the values is growth mindset. You have to adapt. Like you can't be saying that, hey, you know what, this is my vision, and to hell with whether I get the results or not, I'll stick to it. So I think that adaptability, along with persistence, and I think is what keeps people excited. People come and join your endeavors because they also believe in the same set of things, and that's how your classic cults and companies are built, in my opinion. So I think that's really the fundamental.
So, words of a wise man: values is what creates multi-million dollar businesses.
Uh, Everybody has a different approach, so I think my approach is bound to be different from yours, from Elon Musk's, and nobody is right and nobody is wrong. Like we are products of very different life experiences, so we cannot be the same. But I think I'll already speak for myself. I think this seems to work for me.
No, I, I'm in agreement with you. I think if you take a $1 trillion organization like Google, ultimately it's the values, it's the culture, it's the type of people, is a common shared belief in something which is making them a $1 trillion business, and that's the starting point, right? Uh, no, I appreciate that. So, Vinayak, how long have you been running? What's your speed now? What was your speed when you started?
I think I took up like regular running probably in 2014-15 after my first daughter was born. Very interestingly, for the first 4 years, I was only running 4 to 5 kilometers every day. So my goal back then was to run 5 days a week without caring about the distance or the speed. And a lot of my runner friends tell me that's where I built my base of running. So a lot of people get too overexcited and want to do a marathon or a half marathon at a certain speed. I think that probably when I look behind was actually the foundational work that happened without I even realizing or having an ambition for long distances.
Okay. And what's your speed now?
So I think it depends, but I can run a full marathon in like 3 hours 20 minutes. That's what the best I've done. Half marathon, I think in 1 hour 33 minutes. I'll have to check.
Okay. And what were you running in 2014?
So I think from 2014, my average pace, in fact, all my runs were at a pace of like 540 per minutes per kilometer,
Oh,
which is what I would do because I had no idea of, why it is important to run fast, slow, and things like that. Because I would just get out of my home and do that 20 minutes run and come back.
okay. Are you worried about injuries when you run?
Of course, I am, and I think one of the things that I keep telling myself, my goal is not to do certain number of marathons, certain time, distance. My goal in life is to run till I'm on the earth, and that means protecting myself against the injuries is important. And I personally feel there's a lot of myth around injuries. Uh, when you are into active running, there are three ways you have to take care of yourself. One is, of course, like I said, be consistent. So don't take breaks for months and then show up one fine day. Two, I think you have to do a lot of strengthening and do a lot of mobility. I think these three things, if done consistently, I see very little reason why you should have injuries if you're listening to your body. I'm adding listening to your body because body always tells you that you're at the cusp of a break point, and I think respect that.